He was waiting for a reaction, begging, pleading, anger, anything that could confirm his power over me. I gave him nothing. I just sat there, a ghost in a gray suit, watching the performance he'd rehearsed so carefully in his head. His smile began to tighten when he realized the silence wasn't breaking. The show wasn't going as planned. He turned away, trying to recover control. "So the first thing we do," he said to Kyle, "is liquidate the real estate portfolio." He stopped mid-sentence. The heavy oak door swung open. A tall man in his 60s entered, and the entire atmosphere shifted. It was as if the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Mr. Harrison. He carried himself with quiet authority, not the kind born of wealth, but of absolute control. His gray suit was impeccable, his expression unreadable, the kind of face that didn't just see people, it evaluated them. Even Nathan straightened unconsciously. Harrison's eyes swept across the room, passing over Nathan and his entourage like they were nothing more than furniture. Then his gaze landed on me. For a brief moment, something flickered in his expression. Not pity, something closer to recognition. He walked toward me. "Mr. Thorne," he said, his tone level and respectful. "Thank you for coming." He didn't extend a hand, but his words were a handshake on their own, a simple acknowledgement of my right to be there. Then he turned to my son. "Mr. Thorne," he repeated. The same words, but colder, formal, stripped of warmth. The distinction was razor thin, but Nathan felt it. His jaw tightened. His entire existence was built on status and superiority. And the fact that I'd been acknowledged first was a direct insult to his carefully constructed throne. He forced a smirk. "Let's get this over with, Harrison," he snapped. "I've got a reservation at Parade to celebrate." "Don't intend to be late." Harrison didn't react. He simply nodded once. "As you wish," he gestured to the door. "This way, gentlemen." The conference room felt colder than the lobby, the kind of room designed not for comfort but for conquest. A massive mahogany table dominated the center, its dark surface polished to a mirror-like finish. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed not the sky, but the gray face of another skyscraper, a perfect view for people who only looked outward, never up. Nathan took the farthest seat, the one that marked him as the new head of the family, and leaned back like a king on his throne. Sophia and Kyle flanked him like loyal courtiers. I sat near the door, the seat for those who didn't matter. My calloused hands rested on the flawless table, rough skin against smooth polish. Mr. Harrison walked to the head of the table and placed a thick, leather-bound document in front of him. The soft thud echoed like a verdict. The air seemed to thin. He pulled out his chair, sat, and with calm precision reached into his pocket. He brought out a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, placed them on his nose, and opened the binder. "This," he began, his voice steady, "is the last will and testament of Isabella Montoya Thorne, dated August 4th of this year." Even from the grave, Isabella was making a statement. She had built her empire under her name, Montoya, the name that still echoed power and wealth. Nathan rolled his eyes, glancing impatiently at his watch. "First," Harrison continued, "I direct that all my just debts and funeral expenses be paid from my estate." He flipped a page. "Second, I give and bequeath the sum of $50,000 tax-free to my housekeeper, Maria Gonzalez, in gratitude for her 25 years of loyal service." Nathan sighed loudly. "Peanuts," he muttered to Kyle. But I smiled faintly. Maria. I remembered her kindness, the quiet woman who'd always offered me coffee after another one of Isabella's storms. She'd seen everything, said nothing, and stayed loyal. Isabella, for all her steel, could still recognize goodness when she saw it. Third, Harrison read, "I give and bequeath the sum of $100,000 to the Monarch Butterfly Preservation Fund." Sophia scoffed. "Butterflies?" she whispered. "Is she serious?" I froze, because I remembered. Years before the empire, before the lawsuits and the silence, Isabella and I had driven to Mexico. We hiked through the mountains to see the monarchs, millions of wings fluttering like fragments of sunlight. "It's like all the souls in the world flying home," she had whispered. And now, through this will, she had remembered that day too. It wasn't just charity, it was a message. Fourth, Harrison continued, "I give and bequeath the sum of $25,000 to my driver, Miguel Rodriguez, for his excellent service. and for never once commenting on the colorful guests my son brought home. Nathan shot upright. What the hell does that mean? Kyle leaned in. It's nothing, Nathan. Just a joke, but Nathan's jaw was tightening. This wasn't going the way he'd planned. The spotlight was drifting. He started tapping his fingers on the table, sharp, impatient, rhythmical. Harrison ignored him completely. Fifth, he said. I give and bequeath my collection of first edition modernist poetry to the New York Public Library, except for one volume, a 1922 edition of The Wasteland, which I leave to— Nathan slammed his palm flat on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. For God's sake, Harrison, he shouted. Can we skip the charity donations and the servants' tips? My time is valuable. Just get to the part where it all goes to me. The silence that followed was absolute. Harrison didn't flinch. He simply lifted his gaze. Then with calm precision he removed his glasses, folded them, and set them down. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it sliced through the air like a blade. Mr. Thorne, he said, this is not a negotiation. It is not a business meeting. It is the legal proclamation of a deceased woman's final wishes. You will sit, and you will listen. Is that clear? Nathan's face flushed dark red. He wanted to fight back, but one look from Kyle told him not to. Harrison slipped his glasses back on, adjusted the pages, took a sip of water, and resumed. The authority in his composure was absolute. Very well, he said calmly. As I was saying, he skimmed the next line, a faint smirk ghosting across his lips. No, that clause has been struck. Let's move on. Article 6, regarding the personal associates of my son. The tension in the room deepened. Kyle sat a little straighter, confidence returning, expecting a generous bonus. Sophia leaned forward, her phone forgotten, eyes glinting with greed. To my son's financial advisor, Mr. Kyle Vance, Harrison read slowly. I give and bequeath the sum of $5,000. The number hit the room like a slap. Kyle's grin froze. His knuckles whitened against the table. Harrison continued mercilessly. This sum is given with the legally binding recommendation that he use it to enroll in a course on professional ethics. My own financial records show he has a significant need for one. Kyle went pale. His mask cracked. He turned toward Nathan in disbelief, his voice low and trembling with rage. What the hell is this? But Harrison wasn't done. To my son's current companion, Sophia, he said, I leave her the high-quality imitation handbag she attempted to swap for my authentic Birkin last month. The color drained from her face, then came rushing back in splotches of crimson. Her lips trembled. That crazy old hag, she screeched. She lied. I never— Shut up. Nathan roared. The mask of charm shattered. His entire performance was collapsing. His entourage humiliated, his composure slipping. This is ridiculous, he snapped. It doesn't matter. Who cares about a bag? Who cares about $5,000? Get on with it, Harrison. Read my part. I sat perfectly still, and for the first time in 20 years, I felt connected to Isabella again. This was the woman I'd married. Sharp, precise, unforgiving. She wasn't reading a will. She was delivering a reckoning. She was burning away the parasites before the real strike. Harrison waited until the shouting died down. Then, calm as ever, he said, As I've already stated, Mr. Thorne, I will read every word. Now shall we continue? The room fell silent. Kyle looked like he'd swallowed glass. Sophia trembled with fury. Harrison turned the page. Article 7, he said, to my son, Nathan Thorne. Nathan leaned forward, hunger blazing in his eyes. I give and bequeath the penthouse apartment on Park Avenue. He exhaled loudly, a rush of pure relief. His grin returned triumphant. Then smugly he glanced across the table, first at Kyle, then at me. The penthouse, he said. Finally, Harrison continued, voice steady. And my complete collection of Patek Philippe watches. Nathan laughed, his confidence flooding back. Yes, he said. Now we're talking. Hear that, old man? He leaned back in his chair, eyes glittering. The Pateks, all of them. He thought the victory was his. He didn't realize, and the real part hadn't even begun. My son said I would get nothing from my ex-wife's $160 million will. Lawyer, you inherit all. He gets 15, you get $15? Dad, That was my son's final offer, his voice dripping with the satisfaction of a man about to inherit his mother's $160 million empire. He wanted me front and center at the will reading, not out of respect, but to watch my supposed insignificance etched into legal history. What he didn't know was that my ex-wife, even in death, had one last move to play. And I was the centerpiece of it. Before I tell you how it all unfolded, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. And remember, sometimes the quietest people have the most devastating plans. For 5 years, the hum of my wood planer had been my symphony. Each sharp whine was a note, every curl of walnut shaving a verse. Here in my small workshop in Austin, Texas, I wasn't a failed architect or a discarded husband. I was just a carpenter. A man who built honest things from broken pieces. My hands, calloused and scarred, knew the truth of the wood. It never lies. It doesn't deceive. It simply is, with all its knots and flaws on display. I respected that. The smell of sawdust and linseed oil had become the only cologne I wore. That morning I was shaping the armrest of a rocking chair, feeling the smooth curve form beneath my palms, when my piece shattered. The old flip phone on the cluttered workbench buzzed violently, its vibration cutting through the hum of the machine. I killed the planer. The silence that followed felt deafening. Wiping my hands on my dusty jeans, I glanced at the screen. 2 words stared back at me. Cold, unfamiliar. Nathan Thorne. 20 years. That's how long it had been since I'd last heard from him. 20 years without a single call that wasn't laced with accusation or disdain. No Christmas cards. No birthdays. Just a vast empty silence built brick by brick out of contempt. I thought that silence would last until one of us was buried. I suppose I was half right. I flipped the phone open. "Hello?" I said, my voice rough from disuse. "Julian." His voice was sharp, clipped, belonging to a world a million miles from mine. The tone of New York City traffic and $1,000 suits. He never called me Dad anymore. To him I was just Julian, a name he spoke like an inconvenience. "Your mother's gone," he said flatly. No sadness. No pause. Just a line read off a teleprompter, a stroke. It was fast. I stood there looking out the workshop window at the sunlit Texas yard. A strange numbness washed over me. Isabella, gone. The words didn't fit. She had always been a force of nature, brilliant, beautiful, and utterly destructive. To imagine her gone felt wrong. He must have grown impatient with my silence. "Did you hear me?" "The funeral." I started, my throat dry. "It's over," he interrupted. "You weren't on the list. Listen. Her lawyer requires your presence for the will reading. This Friday, 10 a.m. sharp, Caldwell and Finch, Manhattan. Don't be late. It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. A command from a son who'd long crowned himself king of a world I no longer belonged to. I have no reason to be there," I said, steadying my tone. "Your mother and I made everything clear 20 years ago. I have nothing that belongs to her, and she has nothing that belongs to me." He laughed, short, ugly, humorless, a sound that stripped away whatever humanity he had left. "Oh, I know you're not getting a dime," he sneered. "My mother despised you. But this is just procedure. You need to be there in person. A notarized confirmation of your irrelevance." He paused, letting the venom sink in. "Personally, I just want to see your face. To watch that quiet fake dignity of yours crumble when it's read out loud. That's the only entertainment you're good for anymore." The cruelty was surgical. This wasn't anger. It was pleasure. The satisfaction of a predator toying with what he thought was prey. "Are you finished?" I asked quietly. "Almost," he said, his tone smug. "Don't worry about the ride home. I'll spot you $15 for the bus. Consider it a parting gift." Click. The line went dead. I stood there, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the silence. Only this time it wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. Beneath the layers of sawdust and resignation, something deep inside me began to smolder. Slow, quiet, and deliberate. He hadn't invited me to a will reading. He had summoned me to a public execution. My execution, fine, I thought. He wanted a show. He would get one. I set the phone down carefully and looked at the half-finished rocking chair. My hand traced the smooth curve of the armrest, and solid, simple, honest. Then I turned toward the small house attached to the shop. In the back of my closet, behind the flannel shirts and worn jeans, hung a garment bag I hadn't touched in 2 decades. I unzipped it. Inside was my only suit, charcoal gray wool, the same one I'd worn on the day my old life ended. I would wear it again, for the beginning of his Friday morning. The cab from LaGuardia felt like traveling between worlds. Austin's sun-baked quiet had given way to Manhattan's cold steel. I paid the fare and stepped onto the sidewalk, the air sharp against my lungs. Caldwell and Finch's building didn't just stand, it loomed. A black tower of glass and granite. I pushed through the revolving doors, leaving behind the noise of the city. Inside, the air was thick with money and old power. The marble floors gleamed like frozen rivers. The mahogany walls smelled faintly of lemon oil, wealth made tangible. I had designed buildings all my life, but never one like this. This wasn't built for comfort. It was built to intimidate. And it worked. I caught sight of my reflection in the polished marble, the same charcoal suit, pressed as best I could, clean but 20 years out of style. Too broad in the shoulders, too heavy in the fabric. A relic. My shoes, old leather soles, made sharp, lonely clicks as I crossed the floor. A few young lawyers glanced up, eyes flickering over me before sliding away. In a single look, they'd placed me. Not a client, not a threat. Just irrelevant. Exactly as Nathan intended. At the reception desk, the young woman behind the marble counter didn't even bother to hide her disinterest. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for the 10 o'clock, I said. The reading of Isabella Thorne's will. Julian Thorne. Her smile faltered for a second, recognition without connection. She expected someone who looked like Nathan, not me. "Of course," she said finally, the politeness mechanical. "Mr. Harrison will be with you shortly. Please have a seat." I sat down on the edge of a black leather sofa, hands folded, calloused fingers resting on the old wool fabric. Around me everything gleamed, and the glass table, the art, the walls, but it all felt hollow. I was a ghost in a place that had already buried me. And yet that quiet ember inside me burned hotter. I wasn't here to be humiliated. I was here to finish something. Then I heard them. Laughter. The soft echo of expensive shoes against marble. Nathan. He entered the room the way only people raised by wealth do, as if the world were simply his to occupy. He wore a navy Tom Ford suit that fit like armor. His gold watch caught the light when he moved. His smile was that same one he'd worn as a boy, the smirk of someone who'd never been told no. Behind him were two shadows, a young woman, beautiful in that fragile, manufactured way, and a man with a tan too deep and teeth too white to be real. I'd learn later they were Sophia and Kyle, the girlfriend and the financial advisor. They weren't mourners. They were opportunists. Nathan strode to the desk. "Nathan Thorne," he said. "Mr. Harrison's expecting me." The receptionist, and who had barely looked at me, transformed into efficiency itself. "Of course, Mr. Thorne, please have a seat." Then he turned and saw me. For a moment he froze. Then that slow, cruel smile returned. "My God," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You actually came." His eyes dragged over me from the worn collar of my shirt to the scuffed edges of my shoes. "I guess you really do need that $15, huh, Sophia?" The girl giggled, a brittle, glassy sound. The man smirked, appraising me like a piece of old furniture left out in the rain. Nathan gestured lazily toward me. "This," he said with a deliberate pause that dripped with contempt, "is my father." He said father like it was an insult, like it was something shameful that clung to him. And for the first time in years, I truly looked at him. Not as my son, but as the creature my silence had allowed him to become. I said nothing. I just held his gaze, calm, steady, unflinching, and for a flicker of a second I saw it. A crack behind the arrogance. My silence had found its mark. This wasn't the kind of place real doctors practiced. It was where the desperate came, people willing to pay for procedures that couldn't be done legally. At a stoplight, I glanced into the side mirror and caught sight of a gray sedan 3 cars back. Detective Chen, my silent shadow, my lifeline. A wave of relief moved through me. Quiet, steady, grounding. We pulled up to a decaying building just after 10:15. The sign read Med Medical Offices, but half the letters had fallen off. Arnold parked the car and stepped out, feigning concern for his frail father-in-law. We climbed a narrow staircase that smelled of mold and disinfectant. The door on the second floor was marked, Martinez Medical Consulting. The waiting room was small. Old magazines, cracked furniture, no receptionist, no patients. Just silence. Then he appeared. Dr. Martinez, a nervous man in his 50s wearing a white coat over street clothes. His eyes darted to Arnold, then to me, and back again. "Mr. Brooks," he said, voice trembling slightly. "Please come in. I'm Dr. Martinez. Your daughter tells me you've been having memory issues. Let's do a quick evaluation, nothing serious." I played along, letting Megan guide me to a chair. He began his little performance. Date, location, simple math, short-term recall. I answered slowly, fumbling here and there, glancing at Megan for reassurance. She squeezed my shoulder tenderly, the image of a loving daughter. And I, the confused old man. 15 minutes later, it was over. Martinez set down his clipboard, cleared his throat, and turned to Megan and Arnold. "Mrs. Watson, Mr. Watson," he began. "I need to speak with you privately about your father's condition." He didn't look at me. "He's demonstrating clear cognitive decline. Memory lapses, confusion, impaired reasoning. In my professional opinion, he requires supervised care. I recommend pursuing guardianship immediately." Arnold leaned forward, voice dripping with false concern. "We appreciate your thoroughness, Doctor. We've been worried about him managing his finances, especially with his recent inheritance. We just want to make sure everything's handled responsibly." His hand slipped inside his jacket pocket. "You'll provide the necessary documentation?" Martinez nodded, pulling out pre-printed forms. Competency evaluation, guardianship recommendation, medical justification. Everything needed to strip me of my freedom. Arnold's smile widened. He withdrew a white envelope and wanted $500 in cash. Payment for betrayal, for fraud, for destroying an old man's life. "As we discussed," Arnold said, extending it forward. Martinez reached out, fingers inches from the exchange. That was the moment. The crime complete. Conspiracy, fraud, bribery, every element captured, documented, sealed. I touched the inside of my jacket, feeling the weight of my phone, the recording still running. Chen was outside. Stanley was waiting nearby. Justice was seconds away. The envelope changed hands, and then the door burst open. "Police! Nobody move!" Detective Chen entered first, badge raised. 2 uniformed officers followed. Martinez froze, the envelope dropping to the floor, cash scattering across the dirty tiles. Undeniable, visible evidence. Hands where I can see them. Chen's voice cut through the room like a blade. Arnold stood, color draining from his face. "What is this?" "We're at a medical appointment." "You're under arrest," Chen replied, stepping forward with handcuffs. "Arnold Watson, conspiracy to commit elder fraud, attempted administration of controlled substances, and bribery of a medical professional." "This is insane," Arnold shouted. "Tell them, Martinez." Tell them this was legitimate. But Martinez's hands were already in the air, eyes wide with panic. "I want a lawyer," he stammered. "I'm not saying anything." Megan turned to me, face pale, voice trembling. "Dad, what's happening? Why are the police here?" I stood slowly, dropping the confused old man act like a mask sliding off. When I spoke, my voice carried 35 years of courtroom authority. "I heard you, Megan. Through the window yesterday. I heard everything." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "You what?" "The nursing home, the drugged coffee, the bribe. Your husband plotting to declare me incompetent and take everything I worked for." My tone was steady, almost cold. "I heard it all. And I recorded it." "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, Dad, please. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "You plan to drug me, steal my assets, and lock me away where no one would listen." "That's not misunderstanding. That's conspiracy." I held up my phone. California Penal Code 368, elder abuse. 182, conspiracy. 47, administering drugs to commit a felony. You're looking at 3 to 4 years minimum. Arnold lunged toward the door, but an officer caught him, pinned him to the wall. Assault on an officer. Chen added coolly. Another charge. She moved to Megan next. "Megan Brooks Watson, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder fraud and attempted administration of controlled substances." "Dad, please," she sobbed as the cuffs clicked shut. "I'm your daughter." "You did this to yourself," I said quietly. "When you decided I was an obstacle instead of a father. They were read their rights as the officers collected the evidence. The cash, the clipboard, the falsified forms. Through the window, I saw more patrol cars arriving. Stanley appeared in the doorway, calm, professional, legal folders in hand. Our eyes met, and in that silent moment I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Closure. Assets frozen, Stanley said softly. Protective orders filed. Your will's been updated. Megan removed as beneficiary. Everything's safe now, I nodded. Outside, Megan and Arnold were led to separate patrol cars. Megan looked back once, eyes red, searching for mercy that no longer existed. I turned away. Later, at the station, I gave my full statement. Every detail, every recording, every lie. 3 hours of testimony. When we finished, Chen said quietly, "Arraignment's Monday. Bail will be high. They won't be able to contact you." "Good," I replied. The word felt thin but true. Stanley walked me to my car afterward. "You did the right thing, Thad." "I know," I said. "Doesn't make it easier." "It's not supposed to," he replied. "It's just supposed to be right." The drive home was long and quiet. Ordinary people passed me in traffic. Laughing couples, families with kids, grocery bags in the back seat. Lives untouched by betrayal. When I got home, the silence hit harder than ever. No daughter cooking dinner. No son-in-law watching TV. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the echo of everything lost. I made 3 calls that night, to my notary, my attorney, and my bank. Legal steps, clean and necessary. The kind of motions you make when family becomes your enemy. By evening, the city lights glowed across Pasadena. Somewhere out there, Megan sat in a holding cell and crying, broken, no longer pretending. Arnold, too. Martinez awaiting his arraignment. All of them learning what it feels like when consequences arrive. Justice had been served. The law had worked. But victory? Victory tasted like ash. I poured myself a glass of water, just water, and stared out the kitchen window. At 67 years old, I had my inheritance, my house, and the truth. But I also had silence, the kind that comes when justice and law share the same space. The prosecutor had won his case. The father had lost his daughter. Both statements were true. Both were permanent. If you like this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and remember, in silent revenge, truth always has a price. They'd finally understand what it means to underestimate me. Come on, let's get you to bed. Megan's voice was soft, almost tender. But something in it didn't sound like care. It sounded like control. I leaned on her, pretending to be half-drugged. My words came out slow, slurred. Strange. So tired all of a sudden. Must have been the day, the inheritance, the emotions. She nodded gently, guiding me toward the stairs. You need rest. Arnold appeared beside her, one hand on my arm, the other steadying my shoulder. Together they walked me up like caregivers, or captors. The line between the two had long disappeared. In my bedroom, I let myself collapse onto the bed, fully dressed. My eyes closed, breaths deep and steady, the perfect imitation of someone slipping into drugged sleep. Is he out? Arnold whispered. Give it a few more minutes, Megan replied. The dosage should knock him out for 8 hours. Their footsteps retreated down the hall. The door clicked shut. I counted silently. 100, 200, 300. Then I opened my eyes. I rose slowly, quietly, every move deliberate. From the closet, I pulled out my jacket. The second recorder was still inside. I connected it to my phone via Bluetooth, the signal linking instantly. A small miracle of modern tech, something that would have seemed like science fiction back in my prosecutor days. The app activated. Through my earbuds, their voices came through clear as glass. Can't believe he just drank it, Megan laughed nervously. Told you he wouldn't suspect a thing. Trusting old fool, Arnold said, smug. Tomorrow morning we wake him, dress him, take him to Martinez's office. 1 fake evaluation, $1,500 cash, and we've got the paperwork. Once that's filed, we control everything, his accounts, his inheritance, all of it. What if he fights it? Megan asked. With what? Once Martinez signs off, he's legally incompetent. His word means nothing. Their plan unfolded piece by piece, and guardianship fraud, property theft, conspiracy. Each sentence was another nail in their legal coffin. They talked about selling my Malibu property for $5 million. They talked about their casino debts. They talked about me like I was already gone. Your father was useful when we needed a place to stay, Arnold said coldly. Now he's more useful as a source of funds. He's still my father, Megan said weakly. Don't get sentimental now. We've come too far. That silence that followed was heavier than any scream. I recorded everything. My phone buzzed on a text from Stanley. Status, I typed fast. Evidence captured. Drugging attempted. Recording confession now. Appointment with Martinez at 10 a.m. Need address. His reply came seconds later, sending Chen the audio. PD will have the address by morning. Stay safe. I forwarded the files, encrypted, labeled elder fraud conspiracy. Old habits from decades of prosecution never really die. Through the earbuds, their voices continued. If he becomes a problem, there are facilities. Long-term care. No questions asked. They were sealing their fate one recorded word at a time. I stayed awake in darkness, my phone glowing faintly in my palm. Outside, the night pressed in, quiet, heavy, waiting. Somewhere downstairs, sitcom laughter filled the air. The sound of their comfort. Their certainty. I waited until the laughter faded. Then I moved socks, no shoes. Silent steps. I avoided the third stair, it creaked. I remembered that sound from years ago. Late-night trips for water. Through the living room archway, I saw their silhouettes. Megan resting against Arnold, both relaxed, oblivious. I slipped out the back door. The hinges didn't make a sound. I'd oiled them 3 months ago. My old office stood behind the house, half hidden by oak trees, a place from my past life where I stored confidential case files. Neither of them knew it existed. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old paper. I turned on the light, set the tea bottle beneath the lamp like evidence on display, and texted Stanley. When you arrive, come to the back office. Door unlocked. His reply, 20 minutes. I prepped everything, the recordings, my notes, the timeline. Evidence chain, motive, intent. The habits of a lifetime returning automatically. Headlights cut across the driveway. Stanley entered, laptop under one arm. His face hardened as he listened to Arnold's recorded voice. Bribing a psychiatrist, he muttered. That's Penal Code 67.5. Conspiracy to commit fraud, 182. Attempted drugging, 347. He looked up at me. They're looking at 3 to 4 years minimum each. Good, I said simply. For 35 years, I'd prosecuted criminals. I'd learned to separate justice from emotion. This wasn't revenge. This was consequence. More headlights. Detective Danielle Chen's unmarked car. She entered briskly, field test kit in hand. I handed her the tea bottle. She tested it. Within seconds, the liquid turned blue-purple. Zulpadum, she said. Prescription sedative. PC 347 confirmed. Stanley glanced at her. Timing? We can arrest them now, she said. But I recommend we wait. Let them take you to the doctor, hand over the cash, and collect the forged evaluation. We arrest them mid-crime. No lawyer can spin that. Stanley nodded. Agreed, incontrovertible evidence. I understood. It was the perfect trap. The prosecutor in me recognized the brilliance. The father in me felt the quiet ache of what was coming. Detective Chen briefed me on the plan. Surveillance at dawn. Unmarked cars. Plainclothes officers nearby. When your daughter wakes you, she said, stay in character. Groggy, confused, compliant. We'll be watching, I nodded. I can do that. They left before midnight. I walked back through the wet grass, the dew soaking through my socks. The house was silent now. They'd gone to bed dreaming of a life they'd never have. I climbed the stairs, sat on the edge of my bed, and for the first time that night, I let it hit me. Megan, my daughter. The little girl who once cried in my arms when her mother left. The girl whose drawings I'd pinned to the refrigerator. Somewhere between that child and this woman, something broke. I pulled up an old photo on my phone. She was 8, gap-toothed, smiling, her hand in mine. We looked happy. Maybe we were. Maybe that moment was the last truth we ever shared. I felt the grief cut through me, sharp, precise. And then I set it aside. Tomorrow I couldn't afford to be a father. Tomorrow I had to be a prosecutor. I checked my phone. Messages from Stanley and Chen. Try to rest. You're not alone in this, but I was. Utterly. My family had become my adversaries. My home, a crime scene. I lay back, phone on my chest, and rehearsed my lines for the morning. Confusion, trust, obedience. The perfect victim. Outside, the streetlights painted long shadows across the ceiling. Time crawled, 1:30 to 3:15. I thought of my brother James, the man whose inheritance had sparked all this. His note had said, "For the brother who always did the right thing." Doing the right thing, I realized, sometimes meant destroying the people you love most. 21. The sky began to lighten, gray pushing back the black. Soon they'd wake. Soon they'd make their move. And when they did, the law would be waiting because justice, like dawn, always arrives.